Welcome back to the Biz Apps Classroom. I'm Jason Gumpert from MS Dynamics World. This series is all about training and learning and is produced as a partnership between 365.training and MS Dynamics World. On this episode, my co-host Juliak invites old friend and fellow Microsoft MVP George Doubinski to join us to talk about training new talent in the Microsoft channel. George recently brought on a new intern, or perhaps the role is more of an apprentice, and he shares some of the insights he's had about the experience. As you'll hear, there's a lot of care that goes into involving a learner in a business where the stock and trade is expertise in Microsoft Power Platform solutions. George talks about the importance of insulating an apprentice from customer scrutiny, finding the balance between teaching and discovery, catching and correcting bad habits, and how to know when a new learner is ready to become a true working professional. Hey, Julie, we are back here. Good to talk to you again.
Yeah, it's been a little while since we last chatted. I took some time off for the summer, went to Hawaii, went to Vegas. How about you?
Yeah, it's been a lot of work this summer, but I've got some vacation plans still to come. A couple of days I've taken off, but probably not enough.
Okay, yeah, it's never enough. So we have a guest here with us today.
Yeah, can you introduce him for us?
Oh, I get to introduce George. So we've got George Doubinski with us. He has been an MVP longer than I've been an MVP, and he is a dear friend of mine. George, hello and welcome.
Good morning or afternoon. I'm glad to be here.
Tell
Hey,
us
George,
a little
thanks for
bit
being
about
here.
your background, George.
Well, I was looking for an easy way out. I was a .NET developer for a while, Visual Basic actually, then .NET, and was looking for an easy way out. And CRM came along and said, oh, that looks like an easy way to make money. So and, the rest is history. I've been MVP since 2008, I think.
Sounds right, because I'm 2009.
Yeah, we're 1 year apart. So, and been through all of it. So CRM 3, 4, 11, 365, still call it CRM. So now more into Power Platform and Azure. So glad to be here.
So I saw a quote today, a recent quote from Satya Nadella, who called it CRM. So we can call it CRM.
Yeah, I still call it CRM. We end up falling into the CRM/CE, sort of nomenclature a lot of the time, because CE just doesn't seem to pack that punch. I don't think.
Yeah,
I think
not.
Microsoft is trying to move target to shoot. And by moving the target, they hoping kind of to detract market and kind of swing it away. There's some part of it, I guess, changes in the way people perceive it. Like, for example, with the Dynamics 365 marketing, it's customer insights journeys. There is some thinking how the name came about. Yes, it's not only about marketing, it's about data, blah, blah. But inevitably like feel that it's also a moving target and shooting for the new target. So leaving the competition behind kind of on the side. So it's both, I guess. And Microsoft superb at renaming things, as we know.
The industry calls it CRM, whether Microsoft does or not.
Well, I was just going to say, as I've seen things change over the years, and if I'm never understanding why Microsoft has sort of changed up terminology or changed up product names, oftentimes they're being reactive to some trend an analyst has identified or something like that, or some guidance they've had from analyst firms that tell them that this is the direction they should be going, and they adjust, as do other vendors. Not to put it all on Microsoft, but that seems to drive them sometimes too. Sometimes it's their own thinking, but sometimes it's not.
Interesting that for a change, Microsoft, I think, found themselves on the front foot, and they, to the extent that I know what to do or how to behave being on the front foot, and I'm talking about, of course, Copilot. So that's kind of interesting to see how it's going to unfold, because I already see people calling things Copilots, nothing to do with Microsoft. I'm not sure if they trademarked the name. that would be interesting to see how it's going to unfold and if it's going to stick as industry term. Because ChatGPT is ubiquitous term, though it's a specific model. So let's see how copilots unfold.
Right. Is it going to become the Xerox or the Band-Aid, right?
Correct. Yes, and to some extent, it is becoming like ChatGPT and Copilot. They kind of becoming ubiquitous names for underlying technologies. But can we please not talk about AI or copilots today? I don't. I've got enough in
Okay.
my daily grind.
So I asked you here to speak with us about training beginners. You often have interns, and we have over the years shared anecdotes about training interns and folks who are just starting off their careers. So tell me a little bit about how often you get interns and what kind of experience they have when they show up on your door.
Well, I guess it wouldn't be overstatement to say that they're into a boot camp as brutal as it can be. I don't necessarily hold back, and I'm learning myself a lot. I don't take don't take interns often. I think after most recent experience, I'm planning to do it more often, and because I definitely enjoyed or still enjoying one, and I think I started with this woman. She's uh, she's my good friend's wife, and it just came about. Usually, I don't deal with friends in business, but it just happened that she wanted to learn exactly what I needed help with, and we were open. And her husband is super smart developer. More on that later. And I said, why not? Let's give it a shot. So we established, and one of the challenges I find that, generally speaking, I like paying interns. So they do work, and I like to pay people when they do work. And
Absolutely.
yes, and that kind of creates challenges because I'm very open with my clients. I'm saying that, hey, look, I've got intern, I'm putting on, I'm responsible for the quality of work. Here's the rates, and whatever you want to say it to me first, right? So, kind of my job to protect and take responsibility for what they do.
So maybe, George, we could change the terminology because world thinks that interns are generally free, but an apprentice should be paid. So maybe we should start calling them an apprentice.
That's a, that I like that. I like that. I generally I see a lot interns being abused, and it's not specific to our industry. If anything, we do it less, but we're all seeing like you know wears Prada and things like that. The people just generally not valued and pushed to their limits during the learning process and not getting paid. It's like intern. It's like in big accounting companies, law firms, and I see it day in day out that people just you know grinding their way through, and it's just basically for slice of imaginary pie in the future. So, which is really concerning. So, apprentice, I like that. I really like that. So, to start, I'm just summarizing my experience. It's been going on for a few months, and I'm learning a lot, as I said. And when you get an apprentice, keep in mind that for them, it's like going on a camping trip for the first time. And imagine if you've been on a camping trip, imagine if you are going on a camping trip for the first time and no one there to help you. So guarantee that you're going to pack wrong things to begin with or not pack the right things. Um, I'm talking about tool sets. So apprentice wouldn't know what the right tool set is, how to pack, how to prepare themselves for a day, for a week, and so on. Not planning ahead, like no plan whatsoever. So they look up to you for to give guidance. So you have to give it from the get go, and you have to give feedback literally on a daily basis. I spend on a daily basis at least 15, 30 minutes. Just fine tuning the roadmap and where we're going and giving feedback. That's definitely. I used to do it like every few days, and it's way too long, because intern inevitably goes, oh, apprentice inevitably goes on a sidetrack, like, oh, squirrel. Not necessarily squirrel, but whatever attracts their attention, they just tend to,
Well,
sidetrack.
they don't have the experience enough to know where to best focus, especially if they have questions. How long do they
Yes,
spend trying to dig for their own answer before they ask for help?
that's a separate issue. That's a separate issue that they don't want to admit mistakes, and they prefer to dig their heels in. So it's quite important to make them feel welcome and ask them, hey, look, talk to me first before you try to solve it. It's very commendable that you spend 3 hours trying to solve the problem, but the answer is right there, and you just need to know it. Right? It's one of those things. It's not like they wasted 3 hours. It's valuable experience, but when it's your dime or when it's on the customer's dime, you need to prioritize that. So, which leads me uh, to the point that you have to allow them a learn time. You have to allocate, could be 20%, could be 30%, whatever you decide is appropriate, but you have to give them learn time, right? And there's plenty of materials out there uh, in our domain, like Power Platform, Azure, Dynamics 365, CRM. There's so many materials. There are videos and learn material from Microsoft, and it's actually your job to point them in the right direction, because with that vast volume of materials, there's a lot of crap floating in. So it's your job as a mentor to point in the right direction, say this is a good one, this is not so much, ignore this video, and so on. And when they go on a trip, continuing with this camping trip analogy, they don't know how to read map. So they don't know how to interpret business requirements. So it becomes your responsibility as well to help translate business requirements that you know how to read between the lines. And they don't. So it's your job to help them translate business speak into something they can understand, they can deal with.
Right. We want them to have those critical thinking skills, right? We want them to understand how to have that business conversation with the technologist and how to have the technology conversation with a business person.
Yes, but it's also about knowing when to call them out. Say you have, and I have, relationship with the customers where you can call them out and say, "Hey, look, do you really need that?" Your apprentice is not going to do that. They're just going to follow blindly the requirements and say, "Oh, if business asks for green round buttons, let's do green round buttons." It's
So
your
for
job
our
to challenge those
yes,
requirements.
yes. So for our training cohorts that we've spoken about so often on this podcast, one of their questions, I think it's in week 5 or so, is they have to draft an email to a client letting them know that something they've requested just isn't possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's I've got anecdote stories about things like that, but let's not drill into past. I buried myself so many times in the past. So I'm just going through my list of the things that I picked up during this process. And by the way, this woman, I'm considering like taking her on permanent staff role. So that's the best outcome that possibly could happen. So she's now good enough. I don't have to tell my customers that she's apprentice, so I can say she's a junior maker. Yeah. So seriously considering, obviously, when you take someone on, you take on their mortgage, so to speak. Right, it becomes your responsibility. It's a huge responsibility. So don't for anyone considering hiring people. Yes, I know it's easy to fire people as well, especially like in small business in Australia or in US in general. I think there is some protection, but it's easy to hire and fire people. Especially if you're small business, so there's very little protection for people. But remember that you're taking their financial obligations to an extent.
No,
Right?
absolutely. You are responsible for the hustle to make sure that there's business coming in the door so that everyone can put food on the table.
Yes. Yes. And we've seen examples when people go on their own, they hire people and they go past, what is it, 2-year cliff or 4-year cliff? After people go on their own, they have enough fire to keep it going for 2 years, and then they don't invest into developing business, and it all ends up badly. Anyway, enough about kind of business issues, but let's talk about apprentice classic mistakes that I picked up during this time, a few months when we were working together. So, first thing, they trying to spit roast an elephant. It- it's your job to break it down for them to pieces they can digest, they can deal with, because they immediately try to solve the entire problem. Um, Business say, "Oh, we need an app to do X," and they start building an app instead of kind of stepping back and say, "Do we need a data model? Do we Are we happy with our data sources? What data sources do we have?" Perhaps licensing becomes an issue, as it did for our latest project. Not an issue, but we had to reconsider, for example, and move from Power Automate to Logic Apps, because not all users of the system will have Power Apps licensed.
So
So
that goes back to a conversation I've had often with school teachers. So not even college professors, but with school teachers. High school teachers locally have asked me, what do we need to teach our kids so that they can be successful in what you do? And I said, we need to teach them how to identify the correct problem to solve.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So and it's so chunking it up and asking them to solve small problem one at a time. It's your job. They also tend to, when solving problems, they tend to overthink. They see more. They look into business requirements and they see things that are not there. When
Okay.
client ask for, oh, let's input email address here, they immediately start thinking, oh, how are we gonna say, if you will. And
So when do you think is a good time for them to start looking at that bigger picture? Because when we have architects, that's what we architects need to do, right? Is have that awareness of the big picture so that we don't paint ourselves into a corner. When do you make that switch from just do this to have the big picture in mind also?
uh, look, they need to do some kind of exercises before you take them on a long camping trip. Perhaps it's worthwhile to do a few short ones to see how the fitness level is, right? Are they prepared and so forth? So teach them basics. So that's a good idea if you have a smaller projects. Um, Give them a glimpse of a bigger picture. Explain that this report that you're doing now is a part of bigger picture. Make sure it's self-contained. So I found myself spending lots of time making sure that there's a little teeny weeny project that they can do it from beginning to the end. It's part of the bigger picture, and making sure that I don't have to um, explain bigger picture at every step of the way. So self-contained smaller projects is the way to go. Make sure you have those. Could be imaginary one. At some point in time, I ask for a project which turned out to be part of my presentation. So I needed help, and I could do it myself, yes, but I asked her to do a specific work that said, I'm going to reuse this for my presentation. We need to do this, and this. And that's a perfect opportunity. Like if you're doing public speaking presentation, let them help you instead of helping your clients. So you are the client as well. So, but make sure you do have kind of up your sleeve those small projects that they can train on. The one thing that it also helps with is that they tend to over-engineer things, like catering for situations that never gonna be there. Like, oh, what our automation is gonna do if email address is invalid or not passed in. And they start creating automation that it checks for all the conditions. I said, that's very nice for you to spend time strengthening the automation, but maybe we just block it at the entry level and say you have to put address in. And if they don't, and somehow they squeeze past your checks, it's on them, not on you. So solving easy wins, teach them easy wins with little effort. They appreciate that, and they're very happy when they find the way around little problems with the quick solution. Did you know that you can do X? And there were a couple times I said, I didn't know that. That's great. So start learning from them about this. Once they start learning tips and tricks of your trade, then it becomes a kind of game. Did you know that you can do X? So it's kind of make it fun for them to learn. What else? They don't know their weak spots. It's up to you. Everyone has their strengths and weak spots. We're talking about time and time again why at the beginning of the whole Power Apps, Canvas apps things, Microsoft was mentioning lots of examples, but rarely showing them. And one of the reasons some of the apps were kind of for internal use and perhaps contained some IP, but one of the reasons was that they all looked like dog's breakfast, because people were trying to solve business problems and did successfully solve business problems, but they were not experts at UX design at all. Rarely people are. I'm horrible at UX design. I'm terrible, even more so at, for example, report design. Don't ask me to design. If you give me a report design or UX design, I'm going to implement it, no sweat. But don't ask me to design things. So it's important to identify what their weaknesses are, especially if they're makers. If they can't throw, developer skills at the problem, which is actually quite interesting. Remember, I mentioned that my apprentice husband is a very good developer. So inevitably, she sought some help from him instead of kind of coming back to me. And he's been a developer. When he sees a low-code environment like Canvas, he immediately throws his developer weight behind it. So it's like writing a connector or, putting some procedural lines in instead of going by Canvas model, which is Excel kind of like model, which is descriptive and not imperative.
He's throwing $100 solution at a 50-cent problem.
Yeah, and when I saw that, no, it's just going about the wrong way. I had to unlearn few things before I became let's say, mediocre at Canvas. I was terrible. Now I'm just mediocre at Canvas. I'm still have this. I'm still having this developer's flashback when my first reaction is, oh, let's solve it with a plugin, or let's write some code and things like that. And sometimes it is a solution, but it's important to understand that Canvas works in a different way, and you have to be descriptive. So when I saw the code, at some point I said, please tell me that's your husband helped you to write. And she's like, yes. I said, okay, from now on, he's banned from helping you. Like literally banned.
But that's such a great lesson.
You are not a developer and he's teaching you the wrong things.
Yeah.
Right? So it's kind of, you're going on a camping trip and they teach you sprinting. I say, well, cardio is important, important to have good cardio and speed in your legs, but it's not going to help you on ultramarathon. So not much anyway. General fitness, yes, but not much. So here, he's now banned. And I said, look, you have problems, you come to me and we'll solve it together. I'm still mediocre at that, but I'm better than your husband because I've been doing it and he's been doing development. He's a really superb developer. I said, if I need his help, I will holler for his help. And that basically brings my last point I have on the list is that keep in mind that they will try to prove their worth to you, and they will not know when to seek help. We reiterate, and we mentioned this earlier, but it's very important. I wanted to bring it again. They will go on a tangent. They will spend hours, if not days, trying to solve the problem because they look up to you and they are trying to prove that they're good at that and not admitting mistakes. You know that one of the strengths of the seasoned maker or developer is knowing when to admit that they don't know something. It's a skill you need to help them learn. Know your boundary, know when to throw in towels. I don't know. I really don't. I need help. So this is something that they need to find out themselves. And your job is to help them to find those boundaries, and your job is to expand those boundaries. So they, over the time, they seek help less and less. And when they do seek help from you, it's really a serious problem, challenge. Like, for example, we do have right now, and I will have to seek race tickets with Microsoft because it's not going away, this problem. So the final thought from me would be they make lots of mistakes. And that's fine, because they are maybe their mistakes, but they're not their fault. This is on me, this is on you, on mentor.
Right. It's important to give them an environment that makes it safe to make mistakes.
Absolutely. That's your job as a mentor, to provide that environment. But whatever it is, it's not their fault. If they stuff it up, that's on you. Always on you. If you come into this relationship with your apprentice with that mindset, you're good to go.
Well, Jason, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, George, so I think you touched on this, but when it comes to interacting with clients, one of the things I recall from early in my career was getting some help sort of decoding what was discussed, because usually there's subtext and there's conditions or sort of unspoken factors that some people are aware of, some people aren't. And if you're new, a lot of it might be flying over your head to understand why a conversation went the way it did, why your mentor or the person you're working for reacted the way they did if they're a veteran. Have you encountered situations like that with your current apprentice?
Definitely. So initially I was reluctant to bring her into the meetings, and it's kind of natural. You don't want to bring them from the get-go. But what I do use, and find it probably one of the most useful parts of Microsoft 365 Copilot, is ability to record and summarize meetings inside the Teams. So when I do have this opportunity, when I record meeting from my tenant, I have recording, I have summary, and we discuss requirements. And I do go through this with my apprentice through those requirements, and have meeting notes and recording to support it. And it works for everyone. It works for client, works for me, works for her. And when I start bringing into the meetings, first is listening role. And yes, we do go through some unclear bits. Sometimes she will say, I thought that they want this in this report. I said, they say they do, but they actually don't. Ignore that. Right? Sometimes you just need to point them, hey, look, clients are people too, so sometimes, look, I don't want to talk about my clients are exemplary, but I do know some clients that tend to, paint the sky and say, yes, we do need speed roast this elephant. And in fact, no, you don't. But you don't say anything because you know that they will forget about it the moment meeting ends. So sometimes you need to teach your apprentice to filter. You're quite right, to filter, and sometimes even ignore client requirements, or put them on the back burner and say, we'll come back to that later. And sometimes you never do.
Yeah, I mean, talk about things that can send you off in the wrong direction if you're not seasoned to evaluate what's being said. Yeah, it certainly can be a huge
you're
hurdle.
going on this camping trip and in the desert and saying, what if we cross the river? I say, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Or we gotta, someone told us we just have to check out this one lookout point, and it takes you off. The other question I wanted to ask you was, when it comes to like training and learning sources, you've mentioned that there's a lot of them out there. Obviously that's true. Have any that your apprentice has used, have any of them surprised you in terms of the value that they got out of a particular format or a particular source that you would mention?
So sometimes they find different ways of learn things. For example, I find videos generally a little bit tedious for me. I like reading. I find this way I learn faster, probably because I learned how to learn things many, many years ago when videos online were not a thing. So there's plenty of video resources, something like Coursera. They found a few courses there, something like Pluralsight, and of course, 365 training run by Julie and Dave. And my apprentice found it's very, very useful because it's a walkthrough from zero to where you need to be, whether you're low-code or high-code developer. And that definitely helped her a lot. So thank you very much, Julie, for making it possible.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I guess the only other thing it makes me think of, because as you mentioned at the beginning, was, working in the early days of dynamic CRM. Some things have really changed, but I imagine certain elements of this kind of a role, sort of a junior, I guess you call it junior developer, junior maker kind of a role that this person's heading toward. I don't know. Do you see any things that really have remained steady from the early days of this product line till now? Or is it really just unrecognizable?
Oh, look, every now and then they would question certain things or do certain things, like the things that I do on autopilot. For example, the other day they created a couple fields in CRM, and lo and behold, float data type. I said, look, can we please redo it and just don't ever use this data type? like I call it the most useless data type in CRM, um, uh, because it doesn't work as you think it does. Things like that I do on autopilot. I know that I need to create global option set pick list slash choice, right? I never use locals. They do, but that they when you point it out to them, they say, "Oh, but the something like gender in contact is local, but that's coming from Microsoft." I said, "Look, not everything coming from Microsoft is good, and believe it or not, this gender code been around for like 20 years. So what do you know? Historical. So some of the things, sometimes they do teach you new tricks because you do things your own way you've been doing for 15 years, and they come and they do it much quicker, and they say, how did you do that? Oh, I went there. I said, oh, I didn't even know it exists now. Like new role editor, I still found myself going to the old clunky one because it looks so familiar, and they've done job much faster and filter it by search and click, 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 done. I said, oh, geez, I didn't even know it exists. You know, so things like that. It's a vast product, so you learn from them as much as they learn from you. Well, maybe less.
So, George, do you have a time frame when you're going to be ready to accept a new apprentice?
A new apprentice.
Well, because you
Um,
said this one is about ready to be a junior billable resource. So that means you
yeah,
have capacity for another one.
that boils down to this planning, business planning. So remember, I mentioned that apprentice needs to be paid. For it to be paid, I need to have a clear picture of what projects, what's in the pipeline, what projects are coming in. So once new apprentice settles, if let's put it if when I like to think when, but it's actually if. Let's be realistic. So if she settles into permanent role, then give it months or two, and then I'll be on lookout for the new one. What, you have people you can send my way?
I always have people that are looking for jobs. I teach brand new beginners, career switchers. I always have people.
Okay, let's see then. Do you think it's a question for you? Do you think like you have people like? Do you think it's a fair? Um, it would be fair to ask them to go through interview process.
Absolutely.
Would you use it as a kind of training how to do the interviews?
Yes, absolutely. I would love to take some of our cohort graduates and pair them with a mentor who's going to review their LinkedIn profile. Is it attractive to people in the job
Hmm.
marketplace? Right. And then, great. If this is all I ever know about you is your LinkedIn profile, is it enough? Then
Hmm.
let's set up an interview and do mock interviews. Maybe real interviews would come after that. But yeah, let's do some mock interviews. I'm all in.
Hmm. Interesting. It's probably not directly related to topic because that wasn't about apprentice. That was about seasoned developers, and I found myself in a very interesting pickle, and I wonder, like, how is it related to what we just discussed? Um, that we needed a specific a developer or person with a specific skill set. But where I failed, what I failed to comprehend, that client was looking for someone to bounce ideas off, and every single person was superb in their knowledge, but they failed um, plain and simple communication in English test. Um, when I put them in front of client, because client wanted to work with them directly, and that was a fair ask for the specific job, they all failed. They would lock down and wouldn't be able to express their ideas. So how would you deal with situation when you know someone is brilliant at what they do, but their language skills are insufficient. They're not native English speaker, and their language skills are insufficient to express their ideas, to express their skills, to demonstrate their skills. How would you help them to do that?
That sounds like a whole new episode, George.
It does, doesn't it?
Yes. So before we get stuck in the weeds, because we could have this whole conversation, I've got ideas, but I think AI is going to help us with that. But on that note, because you didn't want to talk about AI.
No, I don't. I definitely don't. Not today.
No. So thank you so much for your time, George. I really do appreciate it. As always, I've enjoyed chatting with you.
Always a pleasure. You are one of the very few people who know how to tell him to shut up. So I appreciate timely intercepts.
Yeah, thanks so much, George. This was fascinating to learn more about what you're doing and how you're training your apprentice.
Thank you very much, guys. That's actually an unusual topic for me. So I'm happy to talk about technology, but talking about human relationships, which I'm not really good at. So it's a very, very new topic for me, and I learn a lot. So thank you.
Awesome. George, anything else you want our listeners to know about what you are up to these days? Any, I don't know, events or activities or anything else?
Sure. We're going to, me and I believe your husband, we're going to Vegas to Power Platform Community Conference, where we're going to do a workshop on the subject of fusion development. So whether you're developer or maker, come along and we'll give you challenges and quests to complete. And if you want, you can register and get $100 off. My code would be Enabler100.
And my code is JYAC100.
And my code, no, I do have one, but I'm not going to throw mine in last. Great. Well, I'll see you there. I'll see you both there, I guess, because I'm looking forward to that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Great to hear. All right, excellent. Well, thanks again for being here, Julie. I think we can wrap things up there.
Yeah. Until next time.
Thanks for joining us once again in the Biz Apps Classroom. If you have any questions or comments, you can get in touch with us by email, jason@msdynamicsworld.com or julie@365.training. I hope we'll see you again soon in the Biz Apps Classroom.